So ever since I was a child, I've been fascinated by sci-fi. And the reason why is because I thought it offered a glimpse of future innovation. I always wondered if I came across an alien and had the opportunity to meet one face to face, how would I communicate with it? So what would be the basis and the foundation for that communication? What would be the tool that we could use to ensure that there was no ambiguity and that we knew exactly what the other one was trying to communicate? Well, the tool that we tend to turn to in sensory science is the sensory lexicon. And while you may laugh, I've read somewhere that NASA's actually looking to utilize a sensory lexicon type approach, such as the Rosetta Stone tool. And the Rosetta Stone is a language learning guide. But, you know, when I'm thinking about this communication with aliens, a dictionary would be nice. For myself, actually, when I went to get ready for my Spanish vacation with my husband, he's from Spain, and I wanted to learn a bit more about Spanish. So I resorted to the Rosetta Stone for Spanish. I'd taken a couple of Spanish classes in high school, but I kind of only remembered a few things, and that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, or in my case, I lost most of it, because really all I could remember was words that were important, such as baño, bathroom, very important. Also, I could remember things such as casa for house, and hello was hola. And also, café was coffee, and café con leche, coffee with milk. Also, café de negro, black coffee. But, you know, when I'm going to meet his family, I want to know a little bit more than that. I want to be able to communicate, and I want to be able to have a conversation. So I resorted to this Rosetta Stone language learning tool in Spanish, and I put the CD in my car, and every day on my way to work, I practiced the different words, and I practiced and practiced and practiced so I could learn the pronunciation. And I'm not here to tell you I was fluent by the time I went on vacation, but I did at least elevate myself to a level of Spanglish. I've always been fascinated, though, by this terms of communication and how do we communicate with different people and different beings and different people from different backgrounds. You know, looking at these little girls here, what are they sharing? What are they communicating? What do they know that the rest of us don't? You know, and I became a sensory scientist because I love to learn about people. I love to understand what is those verbal communication, nonverbal communication. What are those different things that have a consumer expectation that they haven't exactly were able to articulate what it is to us? Or they say they want one thing and actually they mean something else. So I became a sensory professional because it combined my love for science, it combined my love for human perception, and it combined my love for food. So where could I go wrong? One of the things that I began to think about as I was getting ready for this presentation is how many times I've utilized a sensory lexicon in my career. So if you probably read in the magazine, you saw that I've been in sensory for quite some time. Started off at Campbell Soup Company, moved from Campbell Soup Company to Mars Chocolate, from Mars Chocolate, now into Mars Drinks. So I've utilized a lexicon throughout my career, from everything from analyzing soup, to nuts, to chicken, to beef. And there's also lexicons out there for wine. And if you're wondering, what is a lexicon is simply a collection of words with definitions that are used by a group of people. So as you can imagine, there's lexicons also out there that exist for sports. There's lexicons out there for things such as tennis, for basketball, and for soccer. So what makes up a lexicon? Let's look here. So you have an attribute name and definition. In this example, you have blackberry. Followed underneath the blackberry, you have the definition. But what's really important to point out with this is that you actually also have the reference, the intensity, and the preparation instructions. So why is that important? because that opens the door for us to all train and calibrate and align across the coffee industry. So it allows us to have a hybrid mindset so that we're all looking at things from exactly the same perspective, and there is no miscommunication. So one of the things that you heard Peter just talk about is all the work that went into forming this World Coffee Research Sensory Lexicon. And as you'll see here, and as he also mentioned, it's made up of 110 different terms. And these terms include flavor, they include aroma, and they include texture. So again, as you see here, each term is followed by at least one reference, the intensity, as well as the preparation. So this again sets us up for that hybrid mindset. So just in case you're not convinced, there's one thing that I would like to leave you with in the middle of my speech, just to kind of get your brains to going. As I was starting to prepare for this speech today, one of the things that I began to think about is how many times I've turned to a sensory lexicon in my career. And it's very easy to take something that you turn to all the time for granted. So I would use it in different types of communications, and one of the things that I thought about as I was preparing for this speech today is, what would my life be like without a lexicon? Or better yet, I'd ask the question, why do we even need one? Well, one reason is to help us to remove personal bias. An example of that is this aroma exercise behind me. So when I have a person that has never interacted with sensory before, one of the things that I would do is test them on their sensory descriptive ability. And so I'll give them an aroma and ask them to describe what they smell. So one of the aromas that I will give them is clove. And if you've ever smelled clove, a lot of the descriptors that I will get back are everything related to Christmas. It's Christmas trees, it's Christmas at my aunt's house, or it's Christmas in the mountains, but very rarely will I ever hear someone actually point out the fact that it's clove. Another example that I like to give is almond. So almond will be described a lot of times as a certain type of cookie, a certain type of cake, but more often than not, it's usually described as a certain type of suntan lotion and a certain specific brand of suntan lotion. But again, never ever hearing them actually call out the word almond. So my personal favorite is lavender. So lavender is very floral, and a lot of times I will hear it described as grandma or grandma's house, right? Here's the issue. So have any of you out there been to my grandma's house? Maybe. Right? So if you've never been to my grandma's house, then what does this definition really mean? My grandma's house, if you'd ever had the chance to go, she was always cleaning, let me tell you. So her house smelled like bleach, and it smelled like pine cleaner. So are we even talking about the same thing when we're saying lavender is grandma's house? It's not the same for me, because that's not how my grandma's house smells. So this is why we need a sensory lexicon, because it removes those personal bias. It removes the emotion. It removes the brand influence, such as them naming different types of suntan lotion. And it also removes the personal experience by them describing the lavender as grandma's house. And what it leaves us with is a lexicon. It leaves us with something that is not emotive. It leaves us with something that is not based on a personal description. It leaves us with something that's universal that we can all connect with. So I'm going to take you through the next couple of slides through different ways that I've used the lexicon in my career. And the first example is what I like to call an informal evaluation. So with these informal evaluations, this is kind of how the setup goes. You're sitting at your desk and you're working, and somebody kind of taps you on the shoulder. Say, hey, can I get a minute? Are you busy? I want you to say something really quick. That's an informal evaluation. And a lot of times it's just very impromptu, where you just go and you taste some coffee, you sit down and you discuss it, and you kind of come back walking away with, a good gut check as to whether you should continue to develop it or whether you should maybe go back and look at some different things. That is one of the first ways that we can utilize the sensory lexicon. If you're kind of nervous about starting to adopt a couple of the terms in there, just with these little interactions, you can begin to just use a couple of the terms until they become habit. One of the other ways that I like to use the sensory lexicon is through something that's still informal, but it's on a lot bigger scale. So now it's just not myself and another person. This is what we like to call a roundtable informal evaluation. And one of the best examples of that I can give you is what I like to call vacation coffee. So I just moved over into Mars Drink segment from Mars Chocolate. And what we like to do as a team is whenever we go on vacation or we go away for business, we bring back different coffees for the team to taste. So in this case, the marketer had just came back from his wonderful vacation, and he brought back some coffee beans, and he was telling us all about his vacation and that he had some of the best coffee that he's ever had. And so he grabbed us in sensory, he grabbed product development, he grabbed the master roaster, he grabbed another person from marketing. And as we were walking down to the cupping lab to evaluate these beans, he also even grabbed someone from manufacturing. He was grabbing everybody. Come taste this wonderful coffee that I have from vacation. So we went down into the cupping lab, and we began to taste the coffee. And overall, the consensus was that it was very aromatic coffee. It has some floral attributes. And then someone dropped the term, "It's bright." You all probably know what bright is, right? I was like, "It's bright? What is bright? What does bright mean?" I'm looking around the room, what does bright mean? I'm going back through my mind, and I'm trying to think. I'm like, okay, so I haven't heard bright in Campbell soup. I haven't heard bright in chocolate. What is this bright term? What is bright? And then, of course, it was like a domino effect. It was like, it's bright. So I'm like, okay, what is this bright term? So I asked in the room, what is bright? Since multiple people are picking up bright, right? I got 4 different answers from the 4 people that said it was bright. So what I did was I began to kind of talk to them about, well, what is it that you're picking up? What is this brightness? Can you explain it a little bit more to me? And I'm new to Mars Drinks and new to coffee, and I really want to do a good job. I want to know about this bright term. And so I heard everything from it's astringent, to it relates to the tartness, to it is the lemoniness of it, even to it's the wininess of it. So a lot of different definitions, and for me it just came across as it was citrus, and more specifically, it came across as grapefruit. So again, it's kind of trying to figure out, like, are we even talking about the same thing, and having that deeper discussion so that we can align on what we're picking up in the coffee and across the different attributes. And we just sat down and discussed it, and we came to an alignment. And I also kind of filled it in on my sensory lexicon so that the next person wouldn't have to go through what I did. So those were 2 examples, pretty less complex examples of ways to use the lexicon. But now I'm going to take you through a more complex use of the lexicon. At Mars Drinks, we have 2 sensory descriptive panels. One is based in the UK, the other one is based in the US. So these descriptive panels are made up of 7 to 10 highly trained individuals where they've been screened for their taste acuity, and then they undergo several months of sensory training in order to understand and how to profile and how to intensify our coffees. For me, what I was looking for when I had the 2 panels is I needed a tool that would allow me the flexibility to ensure that both panels were speaking the same language. So the first thing that I turned to was a sensory lexicon. And what happens between these 2 panels is we have the same lexicon. We also have the same references. And so what that allows me to do is to be very efficient. I can move projects from one panel to the other panel without ever having to compromise on data quality. And you may wonder, that having these two panels from different backgrounds, different geographies, different experiences, how is it that you can get these two panels to rate things exactly the same way, essentially creating this hybrid mindset? It was with the Sensory Lexicon. That was a tool that was used across both. But you know what? You might still not be convinced about the value of a sensory lexicon. So let me show you what I did. I gave both panels the exact same coffee, the US panel, the UK panel, and I asked them to evaluate the same coffee for these attributes. And so what you'll see here is a spider plot of the results, and at Mars Drinks we use a 10-point scale. But what you'll also quickly notice is that both of the panels rated the attributes essentially the same. They're almost sitting on top of each other. So that brings to life and shows you evidence that it is possible to have two panels in two different locations in two different countries, rate the same product, and get essentially the same results. But just in case you're still not convinced, the last example that I want to show you is with the new coffee project. So we were given a project brief from our marketing team in that they asked us to create this new coffee to put into our portfolio. So as you see here, it's the master roaster, myself, and we're sitting there and we're, kind of talking back and forth, and we're trying to really figure out what were those sensory key attributes that we needed in order to meet that product brief for marketing. So once we aligned to what they were, the master roaster went to work and he roasted a lot of different coffees. And we kept tasting and going back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. And the reason why we were going back and forth, because the master roaster would identify some of the attributes from the cupping, but they wouldn't translate sometimes appropriately into the finished pack. So we had to go back and forth. And what happened is that we found the ideal roast from cupping to sensory and finished pack. So we then took those sensory key descriptors, and then we looked at it again once we did mass production in the plant, and we used those sensory key descriptors to then identify what was in the pack. So then the pack descriptions from sensory went on the pack, and then those descriptions then went into the sales training tools. So the sensory lexicon connected all of those different groups, from commercial with picking out the beans, to the master roaster, to sensory, to product development, to manufacturing, back to marketing to build the pack descriptions, then to the sales team, then to our customers and our consumers. And the lexicon was the link that followed through all of those, because we've used the same descriptors throughout the whole process. I want to leave you with these few things to just kind of think about. So the sensory lexicon provides a foundation for us to have a global language. It allows us to create that hybrid mindset across the coffee industry. But what it also does is it increases our efficiency by allowing us to move faster with product development, and it also gives us the tool to talk internally as well as externally, to drive business alignment. So the ask that I have of you is to just adopt a few of the terms and use in your everyday life to help create this global hybrid mindset. And I started off the conversation with asking you, what will life be like without a lexicon? So I want to leave you with one last question and ask you, what would your life be like with one? Thank you.